Season 2 of House of the Dragon has shown us a somewhat different side to the rightful heir to the Iron Throne, Rhaenyra Targaryen. We've seen her struggling, not only following the death of her son Viserys, the death of Rhaenys, and the uncertainty of what Daemon was doing on Harrenhal and if he was still being loyal to her. But as well as that, her approach on how best to defeat the enemy that's in front of her, the Greens, has been plaguing her mind as she's felt as though as long as they had Vhagar, they were inferior. With her having exhausted every option possible, episode 7 of season 2 showed us a side to the character that we hadn't quite seen before. A side which actually welcomed death. She was putting the fate of those in front of her in front of the gods, and the more merciful side of the two sides fighting for the crown took an approach which you would have expected to have seen the Greens exercising. This begs the question on if what Rhaenyra did was that of a rightful queen, or if she viewed herself as some kind of higher power and being in that moment, almost like she was leading a cult. Personally, I think it could well be the second, as there is a lot of evidence that suggests that she had that viewpoint in the speech that she gave in the hall and also in the slaughtering of the part-blood Targaryens. So let's delve into the video and see if the claim of a religious cult leader can well be supported. Here is Rhaenyra Targaryen, queen or cult leader. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. The disregarding of the Dragon Keeper's advice. One of the first occasions where it truly felt like Rhaenyra was throwing caution to the wind and was exhibiting an almost last chance saloon behaviour and believing that what she was doing was correct was when she ignored the Dragon Keeper's advice. They were unhappy with her, essentially doing a Sir Steffan Darklyn 2.0 but on a mass scale, sacrificing the many in order to hopefully come out with a specific few. The piece of dialogue in the conversation that really stood out to me was this section here. Rhaenyra said, Sir Steffan Darklyn was the blood of the dragon, and the Dragon Keeper responded by saying, it was blasphemy, he was no Dragon Lord, and neither are these. Then Rhaenyra followed on by saying, and yet the gods have sent them before us, to which the Dragon Keeper closed and said, you have set them before yourself. Rhaenyra using the gods as a way of justifying her own actions was a very interesting take. Within that moment, I kind of believed that she felt as though it was the gods that had summoned them to be in her very presence, or at least she was just telling herself that. However, in reality, it wasn't the case at all. It was her who called for them to be there. With the Dragon Keeper specifically saying the line, you have set them before yourself, I feel he was almost implying that in that moment she felt as though she viewed herself as some kind of higher power that was in touch with the gods, or was even prepared to just go around what the gods would do or want in order to get some kind of result. It showed the disassociation that she had in that specific moment and that she was prepared to go against tradition in order to make some kind of gain. Even with the Dragon Keepers leaving and advising her against it because they knew the death and destruction that would occur, she was still willing to proceed, something which not only showed just how desperate she was, but also that she viewed herself as greater and willing to take the risk, justifying her actions on that of the gods, claiming that a higher power was in touch with her and leading her decisions. The speech to the thin-blooded Targaryens. This is where the real transformation occurred, and it was actually said that Emma Darcy wanted it to seem like it was some kind of religious cult in the way that the scene played out, and I'd say it was very much the case in the execution. The speech that Rhaenyra gave was all about showing the people that were in front of her that there was a chance of gaining a big reward by doing what she said, power to the level that was beyond their wildest imagination. The words that she spoke when speaking to them, such as answering a calling, in your service you'll be transformed, this is our purpose. To end hardships for you, for your kin. Peace will be restored, suffering will be ended, and without bloodshed, God's willing. May the gods bless you. These aren't the words of just a queen. These are the words of somebody that believes in a higher power and the journey that one is going to go on if they follow the rules that are stated and are one of the lucky few that are worthy of being chosen. It was almost like her speech was taken from a biblical text and the words were specifically chosen in order to be the most convincing and compelling. These were promises that had no evidential justification or proof that it would work. I also thought the fact that she said, this is our purpose, rather than your purpose, was an interesting choice. Because, again, it just reinforced that she was trying to get on the same level as them and show that she was just as much a part of the journey as what they were. The stance that Rhaenyra took as well in walking amongst the people and getting her guard to retreat, it was almost as if she was going down to the level of the people, being more human and giving off the illusion that she wasn't this queen that was untouchable, but she was merely one of them too, but one which held knowledge and power. When looking at recognizing the characteristics of a cult, some are as followed. isolating members, which is exactly what she did when she called for them to go to Dragonstone, seeing loyalty to their leaders, which is what she wanted them to do by sacrificing themselves, unreasonable fear of the outside world, such as impending catastrophe. This is the very thing that she said that they'd be able to end without bloodshed if they participated. Plus, the leader is the exclusive means of knowing truth. This is something that Rhaenyra pretty much claimed when going against the Dragon Keepers and during her speech to the people. So when looking at a few of the characteristics, it's clear to see a crossover not only in the dialogue and keywords that were used, but also the body language and the way that she interacted with them. But most importantly, the characteristics that actually make up that of a cult. The slaughtering of the people. When it came to the pinnacle moments of the episode and the scene where we saw Vermithor unleash complete hell onto everybody, this is where we saw a side to Rhaenyra that we hadn't seen before. It was a closed, emotionless side, which showed that the people that she led into the furnace and were being burnt to a crisp was something that wasn't actually fazing her that much. At least, not during the beginning anyway. She was told to retreat, but she chose not to and decided to stay and watch hell be welcomed into the cave. The final thing that she said to the people was, "It must be the dragon who speaks." Did the people that she led into the cave truly believe that they were going to die in that way at that specific moment? Personally, I don't believe they thought it would go like that. Rhaenyra mentioned no bloodshed, and this being their purpose. I don't imagine they believed that they thought it was their purpose to die on that day. There was one poignant scene where I think Rhaenyra snapped out of that mindset of being a cult leader and thinking ritualistic sacrifice was the best option. This was as one of the small folk was lying there screaming and shouting for help. Help me, was being spoken, and we didn't see their demise occur. But as Vermithor emitted his flames onto the person, the camera cut to Rhaenyra and it went completely silent. Almost as if we were witnessing what was going on in her mind. Rhaenyra barely reacted, but her eyes did a lot of the talking. We saw that she was shocked at everything that was unfolding, and I think at that moment she questioned if she'd done the right thing. Obviously, the end result of Vermithor and Silverwing being claimed showed that it was for the greater good of her cause and strength in the fight. But in order to get those two, she did something that was completely out of character for her. She turned to the gods and utilized them as a way of convincing the small folk to risk their lives for a greater purpose and for peace to be restored, knowing full well that the majority of them would die. Considering that Rhaenyra has always very much felt like she's been more in tune and in touch with the small folk, the people, and their best interests, like how Viserys was, this was unusual for her. In the previous episode, it was all about getting the small folk on her side and getting them to favour her over the current crown that sat on the Iron Throne. Whereas in this episode, she viewed them as disposable and like they were a pawn in her game of eventually claiming the throne for herself. So whilst Rhaenyra exhibited the characteristics and behaviours which one would usually find in a cult, that obviously isn't who she is at her core. But what we did see in House of the Dragon Season 2 Episode 7 was that she adopted that tactic in order to get what she wanted, but most importantly, needed, in order to strengthen her army and feel as though she could take the fight to the Greens and strike first. Rhaenyra is the rightful queen and I'm Team Black. She may have acted out of character in this episode, but it's clear to see why that was the case. It was a last-ditch attempt to try and get some strength. So, there you have it. Rhaenyra Targaryen, queen or cult leader.